Dear viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program, An Egyptian Anecdote. When people think about ancient Egypt, they think about temples, about the pyramids, great statues, and whatnot. Usually, they think about the royalty, kings and queens, the people who ruled the different dynasties and throughout the different eras and ages. But of course, ancient Egypt was not a society of kings and queens. It was like any society we know today. It was a society of people from all different walks of life. So how was the life of the ancient Egyptian layman? Was it very different from the life of the king and queen? Is it any similar to our lives today? To shed more light on this topic, I'm really delighted to be accompanied by two extraordinary guests. These two guests have worked extensively on Deir el-Medina, or Deir el-Medina. There are two different pronunciations for it. It is a very, very, special site in Luxor. It is north of the Valley of the Kings. And this Deir, or Deir el-Medina, is a city or a village that shows us the lives of laymen, basically, masons, sculptors, and other people who work in the construction business. Also, this Deir el-Medina hosts three major things. It hosts the village, it hosts a cemetery or a group of tombs, and it hosts a great temple. I'm really delighted, and starting with ladies first, joining us from Cairo, Egypt, is Anne-Claire Salmaz, who is an assistant professor of Egyptology at the American University in Cairo. Anne, hello and welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you for having me tonight.
It's a real pleasure. And our great other guest is joining us from Turin, Italy. He is the curator of the Egyptian Museum in Turin, and he is also the former director of the archaeological mission at Deir el-Medina. He is Cédric Goubet. Cédric Goubet, hello and welcome to the program.
Hi, hello, Mohammed. It's really great pleasure as well for me to be here with you all. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Last but never least, co-presenter of the program is Amr Habib. Amr, hello and welcome.
Hello, Mohammed. Hello, Cedric. Hello, Ayn. Nice to meet you all.
Hello, Ham.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
It's a real pleasure having you all with us here today. And as maybe you can see here in the background, a picture of Deir el-Medina. And I'd like you please just to shed some light, and please correct me if I was wrong, like you're the experts here, but as far as I know and I understand, it's a place that has a village, a temple, and a cemetery. Can you please shed more light on this?
So I'll go then. It's basically what we call in archaeology a settlement. So it's a place where people lived. In this case, it's a planned settlement. So it's a state-sponsored settlement. As for the village, I think it has been, at least its construction or its implementation has been established by the state. The temple itself does not correspond to the main occupation phase of the settlement of Deir el-Medina. The temple dates to the Greco-Roman period. So the settlement of Deir el-Medina, the original one, was abandoned by the end of the New Kingdom. And during the Greco-Roman period, people came back to the site and built several elements, the most important of which is the Greco-Roman temple. So this temple does not belong to the main phase of occupation. However, what is interesting is you can notice a continuation in the special occupation, because the temple is actually constructed on the area of the cultic places of Deir el-Medina's people, the original ones.
And Cédric, if you can, take from here, and I would like to ask you, like, there is the temple that is a Greco-Roman temple, but the village and the tombs, they are Egyptian, and there are some fascinating tombs, actually, with some amazing paintings from inside. Some of them are for master builders. So can you shed more light on the laymen or the workers that used to live there? What you discovered?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. The people of Deir el-Medina were basically a community of workmen, artisans, so people with a very high skill, a very high level of work and craftsmanship. So in this respect, they had in their possession the tools, but also the knowledge to build themselves proper tombs, and very nice ones from our point of view, but I would also say from their own as well. And just to give you a few numbers, so at Deir el-Medina, in the whole site of Deir el-Medina, there's roughly a little less than 500 tombs, of which 53 have been decorated, or at least have survived in their state, having their decoration. And when we look at the skills and the decoration, the art, one could say, that was involved, we really see that they were masters in their skills. So they were living there in that site, in the village, with their family, so wife, children, and they were going to work almost on a daily basis, but let's say on a weekly basis, in the Valley of the Kings, Valley of the Queens. But then during their spare times, because the week in ancient Egypt had 8 days, of which 8 days were working days and 2 days off, weekend, if we can say. And then during these days off, they were taking their time, using this time off to make themselves these tombs. So this is why we really see a link in the heart and the craftsmanship between the tombs of Valley of the Kings and Queens and the tombs of Deir el-Medina. And this is also why these private tombs are so special and different from all the other private tombs we know of that period.
Fascinating. And Amr, would you like to?
Yeah, I have a question for Cedric, because he mentioned a really good point about those 8 days working. So during those 8 days, you mean they were working in construction of the tombs for the kings and the queens, and the 2 days off, they work on their own tombs, right?
Absolutely. But what's really interesting, but Anne-Claire could also add a lot of things, because her PhD was about that also topic, the compute of time and how to manage the time, daily time, but also weekly time. Deir el-Medina is one of a kind site, because together with the archaeological remains, we have got tens of thousands of pieces of writings. So these famous ostraca, so these flints of stone, these pottery sherds on which people took note. Also, a lot of papyri were found, giving the archive the daily life, revealing the daily life of this community of workmen. And among the pieces of archive we have the absence of work, the presence of work. And therefore we know, yes, on an ideal world, there was these 10 days, of which 8 were working days, 2 weekends. But people could take days off, either because they were ill, sick, but also to work at their own tombs. We have this reason being given, like, sorry, I cannot go work today because I'm working on my own tombs. or I'm busy, you know, working on my friend's sarcophagus or coffin. So we know that. So this is really, really interesting. That yes, there's these 8 + 2 days, but it could be adjusted, and they were quite flexible.
Very interesting. And for Anne, I would ask here actually, like from the findings you find as you go day by day in this site there in Medina, does it give you a picture or imagination? You can picture something about how they lived day by day, like in terms of like they lived there by their families, or it was just purely the construction workers and their families lived in somewhere else? Also, like if it was family oriented place, that people interact with each other like neighbors, that they kind of corporation kids together, they go education or they go to schools. What can you tell me about that?
Several answers that can be given to these multifaceted question. We know that people from Dar al Medina, well, the workmen themselves and their family lived in the village. So they lived in the village with their wife. We have census basically about their houses. So with their wife, children, sometimes some elderlies living with them, a divorced sister, or a widow sister. In terms of children, when you look at traditional publication on Dar al Medina, you see that there were huge families living within a house, which I believe is not true. First, when you look at census, there is only 2 to 3 children living in a house at the same time. But we have to see that on the long time. A family can be huge. It doesn't mean that all the children lived in their house at the same time. So when a son, for instance, was old enough to take a job, either he can have a job in the community if one was available, or then he had to leave the community. So people from Dar al Medina interacted with the surrounding villages, even the East Bank, for familial reason, but also for professional reason, for religious reason. And I can't remember the rest of the question. Living in the village in terms of interaction, it's difficult to be sure or to give a definitive answer. What I can say from my own research is that you have some cluster of houses next to one another, and each house belongs to a member of a family. So even though the village was state-sponsored, people seems to have some kind of a leeway in the spatial negotiation of the village, and family tend to gather on one sector of the village, which is very interesting. And on a broader scale, I think the interaction in the village itself were quite regular. I mean, you have to, I think the best point of comparison, if you know a bit of Luxor, it's to look at the mud brick houses that are still standing around the village of Dar al Medina, and I mean, wander around these villages to have an idea of how people interact. Doors are open, meaning that there is, at least during the day, no real separation between inside and outside. The street is semi-privatized by quarter. So, I mean, living space for lots of interaction between people. And it's a tiny, neat community. So, I mean, interaction were part of daily life, that's for sure.
So it would be a real great pleasure if you can give us the honor of being with us here again to shed more light specifically about education, for example, in ancient Egypt, or the specific discoverings, because like you said, Anne, I think that needs a lot of time on its own to really shed absolute light. But I'd like to ask you, when you did your excavations, when you did, you had your discoveries there in Deir el-Medina, how much did it tell you about the social pyramid and the social structure of the Egyptian society at that time? So was it similar to, like, the Platonic or Aristotelian society, with the philosopher king on the top, for example, and then the army, military, and then the craftsmanship, or the craftsmen were like of a higher, like, what was the hierarchy really of the Egyptian society, and how much respect was given to the layman from the superior authority?
So in terms of hierarchy, we have this image of a pyramid, the social pyramid with the king at the top, that's for sure. Then you have the upper or the highest elite, members of the royal family, highest members of the administration. Then you have another echelon with lower elite. So it could be people in the capital, but with less responsibility, or a local elite. And then you have the rest of the society, and it's quite difficult to put some levels. At the bottom of the society were probably the peasants. But between the lower echelon of elite and the peasants, you have a mass of people who could be craftsmen, who could be priests, or even scribes, these small bureaucrats writing things and having basically no responsibility. As regard the craftsmen, you have two types of craftsmen. You have the royal craftsmen, so Deir el-Medina people were royal craftsmen, and you have I would say regular craftsmen, either working in workshops, private, or more organized. The royal craftsmen, I believe, tell me, Cedric, if I'm wrong, but I believe they had a good reputation, because on the side they were also working for private command, so there were commissions, some pieces of funerary equipment for the elite. So I think it shows that they were in a way respected. But we have a text called the Satire of Trades from the New Kingdom, and basically the moral of the text is you have to be a scribe because it's the best position. So it's a text written by scribes, for scribes. It's the culture of scribes, basically, encapsulated in this text. So the goal is to give a few lines about every trades that exist, and depict each trade in a very negative way. So you can see that craftsmen are included, and they were not well regarded. But this text is biased, and I think we can confidently say that Deir el-Medina's craftsmen were fairly respected.
So Cedric, like here, just to carry on, like the other part of the question really is that what you pointed out is that some of these workers were able to take something like a sick leave, like a family, care leave, something like that, which really contradicts the image that, or the misconception that some people might have, is that most of the workers just worked with whip lashes on their back most of the time. And another thing, just like and just said here, the scribe is such a reputable job, and it's a way to excavate, it's a way, I'm sorry, to elevate yourself in the society and to exalt yourself really in the society, to be a scribe. And we have the very famous scribe statue. So how much was science knowledge respected, and how what is the level of human rights with our modern day definitions in ancient Egypt?
Well, very complex question. I'll try to, and then I'll clarify if you can complete. I would say from what we know, and linking it to the previous question, the scribe of the royal necropolis was the one administratively not in charge, but at the top within the community, because this community of workmen was under the direct supervision and management of the vizier, who was the prime minister of the time. So he was then directly reporting to the pharaoh. So they were quite high. So that left that specific position of being the scribe in charge was the one reporting, being the intermediate between the outside world and the community of workmen. And inside the community of workmen itself, well, you had the chief of work, the chief architect, or the chief of all work, who was also then, therefore, the one in charge of the work being carried in the Valley of the Kings and Valley of the Queens. And then the community was divided in two parts, the left side and the right side. So in this matter, we must assume that the majority of these workmen would be regular stone cutters. So they were the one, they excavating, removing the stone from inside the Western Mountain. So in this case, the science would not be, quite important. But we have other titles saying that these were the wood craftsmen. So they were able to make wood, so the wooden scaffoldings to take the measures inside the tombs, and measures were very important, obviously, in order to go inside the mountain and not to collide with another pre-existing tomb. So these mathematicians kind of had to, to be the expert in calculation, etc. So angles, vertical and horizontal angles. So almost like topographic engineers almost. So in this case, yes, science was very important. We know Egyptians were mastering mathematics, etc. We have the papyri detailing this. Therefore, in this community, you had many different specialties, allowing the whole work to be carried to an end and to a good end. So, Antea, if you have anything to add.
Well, broadly speaking, I think that science, it doesn't really exist per se. I would say that it's, well, at least if we talk about medicine, astronomy, or scientific fields like these ones, everything is linked with religion. So most of the specialists were priests, and therefore they were working within the framework of temples. It doesn't mean that knowledge was kept, or at least part of knowledge was kept within temples. We know that some of this knowledge, especially medical formulas, or mostly magical formulas as well, could have circulated outside the walls of temples and were used in daily life. We have magical and medical texts from Dur Medina. So, but we don't know who used these spells. Maybe there were some more knowledgeable people within the community. There is a doctor within the community, but it's a workman who was assigned the care of his colleagues. We don't know if he had a specific training. That's the problem. Or if he just followed the instruction from the formulas that circulated at the time.
But how much would you assess the human rights? Like, if you would assess the human rights in this site, at least, do you think that
I think very, very high. Were very high. I mean, there was at the beginning this idea that Dur Medina, because it's located in an isolated place, was secluded, and so people couldn't get out from the community because of the secret they know regarding the royal tomb. It has been completely disproved. Actually, people could come and go from the village. The village is located where it is because it's close by the working places, so the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. In terms of human rights, I don't know how we can judge that, especially with regard to our own standards. What is important to say maybe it's that at Dar el Medina, for instance, women had their own freedom, and especially over their propriety. And we have a will of a woman named Naonarte, and in her will she decided to disown 4 of her 8 children, I think, because they didn't take care of her when she was old. So she has, the upper hand over her possessions, and she decided how she wanted this possession to be dispersed after her death. So I think with respect to women's rights, it was not totally a Me Too, a Me Too community, but still, I think the question of whip slaves and everything doesn't work for the Egyptians.
And because they were state employees, and they were receiving a monthly salary, of course, obviously not in cash. They were receiving goods, so food, clothing, also wood and pieces of meat and fish, etc. And also there was a specific bunch of people, outsiders, who were bringing, their work was to bring to these workmen on a daily basis water for, to survive in this very hostile environment. So therefore they were really taken care of, because we need to be, to bear in mind, they are working for the afterlife of the kings and the queens, which is the most important thing in Egypt, to maintain the balance between chaos and order. So if these people are mistreated, then the world will end. So this is basically also what we have to bear in mind.
And what is interesting in terms of rights, the first strikes in history happened in the community of workmen under the reign of Ramesses III, because they hadn't received their salary on time several times. They decided to stop working and they decided to go on strike. They went out of the village to protest in front of one of the memorial temples, the royal memorial temples on the west bank of Thebes. There were actually temples, but there were also administrative centers. And as such, they were in charge of providing the community of workmen with their necessary ration. So when the ration didn't arrive on time, several times, they went on strike, and they were not punished for it.
So you can't go on a strike unless you have the freedom to do such. So, and people saying ancient Egyptians were working under slavery of the kings and queens. So you guys are the experts now, plus whatever we're finding in the books and like hearing another archaeologist or historian say, no, it wasn't like this.
It's more complicated because these are very specific workmen, royal workmen. So for the majority of the bottom levels of the population, there existed what is called the Corvae Labor. So for the peasant, for instance, during the inundation season, they were basically required to work for the states, which for some implied working for a royal construction project, for instance, the pyramids, but it was some century before Dar el Medina. I believe that they were likely working on repairment of canals, the dikes, stuff like that.
Maintenance, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Maintenance, exactly.
Yeah, very interesting. So basically, because like we're coming closer to the end of our interview, So we would like, of course, to host you again, and you can show us more details and secrets and unreveal some, like, you know, untouched secrets here about this site, if you don't mind. It's our pleasure, guys.
It would be our pleasure, I'm sure, about that. Absolutely.
Likewise.
Really looking forward to having you again because, yeah, like there's a lot of amazing things, and you really helped our viewers to change a lot of misconceptions that they might have had, or like some kind of stereotypes, because that's a problem. You know, people have stereotypes and stigma, and unfortunately, you know, the more you hear them, the more engraved they'd become in your minds. And so really thank you very much for being with us. You know, today I really have to thank you again for your time and for the time difference, because you're joining us from Italy and from Egypt. So thank you very much again. Anne-Claire Salmaz and Cédric Gubey, thank you very much for being with us. Really looking forward to having you again with us in the program. And of course, Amr, you're the co-owner of the program with me. So again, it's a real pleasure having you today again.
Thank you, man.
Very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Cedric.
Thank you. Bye.
And dear viewers, if we were to recap here, really, Deir El Medina is not only a site, it's not only a place for tourists to come and enjoy the wonders, but it's a real eye-opener. You know, and this is the beauty of archaeology and of excavation and of Egyptology, because, you know, you have different layers, and these layers represent history. So you have history under history under history under history. The more you dig, the more you delve into the crypts, the more you find. And, you know, a lot of people who argue today that history has to be rewritten, because many of the ideas we have, or the stereotypes, did not really stand the test of time, when a lot of excavations have been done and a lot of discoveries. Really looking forward to seeing you soon in our next episode, and really looking forward to have our real distinguished guests again with us. So until we meet again, have a very pleasant time. Thank you for watching.